Hi, my name's Amanda Magner. I did my presentation on romantic hysteria, how songs, arias, art songs portrayed heartbreak, tragedy, and romantic obsession. So my analysis started out with me trying to figure out whether or not love had a certain progression. So I came up with this kind of algorithm saying that love starts out with the beginning stages where everybody's really happy, things are great, and then there's heartbreak, and then after that heartbreak and turmoil, there's romantic obsession where you're kind of stuck on your lost lover. How I came up with this algorithm was I looked at different stages of love demonstrated around the world. So in music, TV, books, and mass media, what do we get fed? And then also I wanted to see if there were different cultural implications for each form of love. And the three art songs and arias that I chose to represent this are from 3 different countries. The first one is from America, and it's called I Shall Not Live in Vain. The second one is French, it's called Après un rêve. And the third one is called Gretchen am Spinnrad, and it's German. So I wanted to look to see how love is conceptualized in America, France, and Germany. So how I did this was I found a research study set by the University of Colorado in 1986, and they asked American and German college students how they described love. Their algorithm was based off of questions about family, social statistics, socioeconomic data, how they interpreted the mass media around them, and also societal judgments and predispositions based on love because of their external surroundings. For the American students, they were more realist. They did not buy into the idea of love being totally fulfilling and awesome because of the high divorce rate, since our divorce rate in our country is 50%. And at the time in the 80s, it was still pretty high. So that's how they viewed love. And the German students, they were actually more passionate about love. They believed in love for marriage, even if the marriage didn't work out, and they talked about supporting their partners economically as one of the #1 ways to show love. In France, I used an essay documenting the French personification of gendering the instrument, the lyre. What I mean by gendering the instrument is that the lyre is an instrument that is based off the female body, so it's very curvaceous in shape. And the French like to personify and romanticize a lot of different things in their culture, and they respect the lyre, especially during the colonial era, as a way of respecting women. And so as the essay went on to talk about how the French romanticize female bodies, they also romanticize everything else. And it was noted as the home of love, so that's why French and France culture looks at love as this end-all, be-all, awesome type thing. Okay, so before I start my analysis, I wanted to do a little background on the composer of the first piece. His name is Hagee. He was born March 31st, 1961 in West Palm Beach, Florida. He was an American composer, and he also relocated to San Francisco and commissioned a lot of works for different opera singers. He came from a musical family, and he liked discussing all different types of themes of love. In all of his operas, Moby Dick, 3 Decembers, and Dead Man Walking, but he wrote a collection of modern art songs called The Faces of Love, which is where I Shall Not Live in Vain is from. He also had a fixation on the Romantic era, and he focused a lot on romanticism in music, and so that's why he really likes specializing in writing art songs and operas. He was inspired by his first piano teacher and his second piano teacher. His second piano teacher actually ended up becoming his wife, and they ended up getting married when he was 21 and she was 70. So their love was very controversial. And his father committed suicide while he was in high school, and that's also one of the main themes that you can see in his works as well. And he also had to come to terms with his homosexuality. So while he was married to his wife, he stayed faithful to her until she died in the mid to late 90s, but he realized he was homosexual. So he looks at love in different forms because of the different things that happened in his life. His first piano teacher really helped him find a place with romanticism through the works of Emily Dickinson. So in the Faces of Love anthology, he uses a lot of her writings. The first text, I Shall Not Live in Vain, comes from her poem, If I Can Stop One Heart from Breaking. And this was after a crisis of her Christian faith because she fell in love with the pastor and he did not love her back, so she started to question her Christianity. And she found solace in transcendentalist theory. And transcendentalist theory talks about its unflinching faith in the worth of the individual and its reliance on the goodness of nature, it's brought a full close to the doubt and pessimism of early Puritanism. So the text of I Shall Not Live in Vain is essentially kind of after she lost her crisis in faith and found transcendentalist theory, and it's actually a happy time in her life. And it's about charity and the necessity of kindness and good deeds. One's life has value if any act of goodness has helped another creature. So it talks about love being everything. And I chose to use this piece as the beginning of love because it talks about how amazing and awesome loving things are. For my analysis, in figure 1, the piece is pretty much non-tonal, but it stays in the tonic. It starts in E major and it stays throughout E major, and it just stays in 1 and variations on 1 in the tonic throughout the whole piece. And the text is repeated to show an emphasis on how important loving is. And the piece also crescendos on certain parts of the vocal line where I circled if I can ease, it crescendos to show how important it is to ease one's pain. And then it decrescendos when it starts talking about or cooling one pain. Also, Hagee was inspired by his wife to write this piece as well. So this is a very personal piece to him. So I'm going to perform this now. Okay, so the second piece in this analysis is Après un rêve by Gabriel Fauré. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Gabriel Fauré. He was born May 12, 1845 in the south of France, and he was a famous French Romantic composer from the early 19th century. He comes from a musically inclined family, and his pieces reflected the change in chromaticism and harmonic structure in art song, and he also set the standard for the French Romantic period. He was married once, but he had multiple affairs on his partner, which caused a lot of tension in their marriage, and he died November 4th, 1924. The text he used for Après un rêve was written by a friend of his named Romain Boursin. He originally wrote this piece in Italian, and it was transliterated into French, and it discusses heartbreak, and it compares the longing of a lost lover to a fleeting dream. So in the first figure, you'll see that the vocal line starts out and it starts crescendoing, and then it decrescendos at the end. And the second figure, it does the same thing. So anytime there's a break in the music and the vocal line starts out, it's going to crescendo and then decrescendo. And the third figure, there's a portion of the piece where the speaker is finally realizing that their lover is gone, so it fully fortes and crescendos throughout the rest of the piece. Also, the interesting thing about this piece is that it primarily stays in the tonic as well. It does not really do much harmonic variation, and it is in D minor. The piece also contains a lot of grappling with the emotion of realizing that their lover is gone. So that's a lot of the reason why the crescendos happen and the decrescendos happen. So now I'm going to sing this one. Oh. And then the last piece is Franz Schubert, or it's by Franz Schubert. He was born January 31st in 1797 in Zuchmantal, Austria, but he also regained a lot of popularity in Germany as well. He was a composer with a musical genius at a young age. He was primarily self-taught, and he wrote his first song at age 11. He began writing fantasias, chorales, symphonies, and sonatas at age 13. He was a romantic composer of the 19th century who coined the programmatic style. Programmaticism is when the music is set to mimic the text or the text is set to mimic the music. So for this particular piece, Gretchen am Spinnrad, it's going to be about a woman who's at the spinning wheel and she's obsessing over her lost lover. So the piece is going to be, the piano is going to mimic the frantic nature of the spinning wheel. He never married or had children. He primarily spent his time with prostitutes and had a wild sexual life. He contracted syphilis that ultimately led to his death, and he died November 19th, 1828. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe was the person who wrote the text for this piece. He was a famous playwright, author, and poet of the same time during Schubert. Schubert set many of his works to music, especially the Earl King, which is one of his most popular pieces, and Gretchen am Spinnrad. And the text for Gretchen am Spinnrad actually comes from a massive play that Goethe rewrote entitled Faust. He was inspired by Christopher Marlowe, who was a 16th century playwright who wrote a play on Faust that didn't receive much recognition because he was competing with Shakespeare, who was the most popular playwright of the 16th century. So the speaker in Gretchen am Spinnrad is discussing her obsession with Faust. Okay, so this piece also does not have much harmonic variation. It stays primarily within the tonic, and the tonic is in D minor. There are some levels of chromaticism throughout the vocal line to show the frantic nature of obsessing over and over the lost lover, and the phrase "meine Ruhe ist hin" is going to be repeated multiple times to show that the speaker cannot get over her long lost lover as well. And what's interesting about this piece is that it starts out in a very low dynamic range, but then it increases depending on what she's talking about when she's referring to her lover. So in the middle of the piece, there's going to be a section where she's talking about his eyes, his hair, his face, everything, and that's when the piece gets louder and louder and more intense. And then you can hear the vocal line getting frantic along with the piano line. So I'm going to perform this one as well. Okay, so now that the analysis is over, I wanted to talk about if these pieces actually fit the context of what I studied relating to culture. So with the beginning piece with Jake Hagee, I kind of saw a discrepancy with how American students talked about love and how he idealized love with I Shall Not Live in Vain, which I thought was interesting. With the French piece, I definitely thought it fit the theme of personifying something that does not necessarily need to be personified, which is comparing love to a dream. And then the third piece I thought was passionate, but not in the same way that the German students thought. It was definitely a passion because of the obsessive nature, but it wasn't passionate because the lover was gone. And also, I created a story map with second. Okay, so this story map is just going to be a little map that I made that shows where everything was location-wise. So this is where Jake Hagee was born, West Palm Beach, Florida. And then the map's going to shift over to San Francisco. Oh, nope, didn't do that. There it is. Okay, shifts over to San Francisco where he became popular. And then it's going to go to Foray and where he was born. And then shows his popularity in Paris, France. And then it shows Schubert and where he was born in Austria. And then his popularity in Germany. And it's just to give you a little bit of a geographic context as to where everything was located. So yeah, that's my presentation.